What's going on, TAP? This your boy Play B coming to you live and direct with my boy Rev. Wait, we're not live and direct.
We're not live and direct. And you forgot to say what we're on.
Yeah.
What are we listening to?
There's one argument you cannot make, that if we had less guns, we would have less gun violence. Like, that's obviously true. You can't argue against that. Less guns, you'd have less gun violence. For people to say, no, even though we have more guns, we'll have less gun violence and less violence overall and less killings overall is an insane argument. It's a specious argument. They don't even believe it. They say it because they want to keep their guns and they don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
And they don't even care about logic. So you know it. You know that if there are less guns and there's tighter gun control, you'll have less gun-related homicide.
This chart doesn't reflect private sales, but it shows the number of background checks, which all federally licensed dealers have to run. It suggests that the demand for guns has been increasing steeply since Barack Obama took office.
This part is absolutely true. Despite how hard it is to trust someone who can't properly spell Obama, I know. With Barack Obama's demagoguery, people were concerned, and many did exercise their Second Amendment right for the very first time. Hence the legal background checks. Oh no, wait, that's a bad thing now. Side note, violent crime has still been decreasing. Matter of fact, firearm-related homicides have gone down a whopping 39% from 1993 to 2011. Which is important to note because this steep, scary graph is designed to plant the idea in your head that more legal gun owners equals more gun crime. Not true.
What's going on, everybody? This is the TAP, the Apocalypse Project. I'm your boy Play B, chilling right here with my man, Sarev. Say
Hey, what's up?
Now, the topic of today is kind of controversial. It's, will less guns equal less murders? What do you think on that? First of all, what's your take on that, Rev? Like, do you think, honestly, taking away the guns is also going to cut down on crime or gun violence in general?
Well, in comparison, first we got to look at the debate itself, and then right now we look at the two main arguments, right? So you got, for one thing, in the clip that we've seen, which is a video presented by the Young Turks, which basically say, in general, less guns will equal less gun violence.
Right.
And a lot of the conservative mindsets or the pro-guns people say, well, look at the statistics. The statistics actually show that a rise in gun ownership has actually led to a decrease in violent crimes involving guns or firearms or less murders involving guns. So now the question that persists is, are those statistics, do they correlate with each other? And I think that's what we have to look at today. And we got to look at a lot of other statistics. And you and I have, a very strong view on that. Well, we're actually 100% pro Second Amendment, and our interpretation of the Second Amendment is
freedom.
Okay.
That's
perfect.
First of all, I think that's what it boils down to.
Exactly.
It's freedom. I mean, that's how we won our independence in the first place, is having to combat violence with violence or having to use violence to gain our freedom in the first place. I think that's the mindset of the American people.
No, and I completely agree with that. And I think that's the mindset of a lot of people that are pro Second Amendment or pro gun rights, is mainly because you have to understand that it is principally a freedom. And a lot of people like to say, all you want to do is have guns. We got to look at what's underlining that. Yes, it's about having guns, but what are the purpose of guns? So it comes down to our inalienable right.
See, now you got me messed
inalienable right. So it comes down to our inalienable right, which is for self-preservation.
Yes.
The way the writers of the Constitution decided to write that as the definition is our ability to bear arms, and that should not be infringed upon by the government. So when you break it down, that's what it is, and you have to stop and think about it. So we have a right to defend ourselves,
right?
But from who and from what? And that's laid out in the Constitution, in the Second Amendment, where you've basically seen that in the past, countries that are not free and that don't have a right to firearms are more likely to be oppressed and fall subjected to tyranny.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not, and that here's where the conversation gets muddy. Okay, the conversation gets muddy in the fact that people on the left or anti-gun people will say, "Well, what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
Are you literally afraid of tyranny, that our government will turn tyrannical and will try to murder and oppress these people?" And you stop and think, and you want to ask these people, well, are you ignorant? What have you seen in the past?
Yeah,
just because our country as a whole, country as a whole has not objectified and oppressed the country as a whole, but we've seen that in segments of society, of our society, could be oppressed.
Right.
And you look at, I thought too, as recent as World War II, when Japanese were
yes,
interned.
When they're in the internment camps and everything. Yeah,
and it happened in internment camps, not concentration camps, internment camps. But basically, their rights as American citizens were taken away. Were revoked, taken away. You're no longer American because you are Japanese.
Yeah.
Okay. That is very scary.
Well,
stop and think about it. That's very recent, very recent within the. That was what in the 1940s. Okay, not too far removed. That's what 2 or 3 generations removed.
And even I mean, the way I see it, it's got to be recent in my eyes because the people that lived through that, some of them are still alive today. Yeah. So if you could say that happened in history, but they're still alive today, I'd consider that current. Yeah. In a way, you know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. And most. United States is very different than a lot of the world, and we can get into that too. And we're getting off topic from exactly what we're doing.
Well, less guns.
Yeah. So
do less guns.
Do less guns equal? Will less guns equal less gun violence or gun murders? And the reality is no, because since 1993 till recently, I think gun ownership has increased by 56%.
Right.
Okay. And gun violence or violent acts committed with a gun or a fire, any kind of firearm, has actually decreased about 40 to 50%.
So with the increase of gun ownership, gun crimes have gone down.
Yes, when you stop and think about it, there's another statistic that I think we got to gather up more of these statistics because there's just statistics, and we could also put up links and put up these statistics. But another statistic also shows that in countries that have a gun ban,
right?
You see a spike or an increase in what would be called home invasions or burglaries where where people are home.
I think they're called hot invasions or something.
Yeah, exactly. Hot rob or whatever they're called. We got to find the term.
Yeah.
But if you set aside homicides for a moment and look at rates of burglary or assault, you don't see that same spike that you see with homicide.
Pause. Interesting fact about burglary. In the UK, with strict gun control laws, mind you, 59% of burglaries are what they call hot burglaries, which means the person is home when the house is burgled. At least they're going to say, you're being burgled. It's not as intimidating. As opposed to the United States, where only 13% of burglaries occur when the resident is home. For reference, hot burglaries have a much higher potential for violent conflict. I wonder what could be deterring said hot burglaries stateside.
But in places like the UK where they have a complete gun ban, those rates are pretty high. Where in the United States, I think if I remember right, the statistics is the 13%.
Right.
13% of all burglaries
they don't know
happen.
Who's armed and who's not armed.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of that is attributed to. But this topic and this discussion and this debate is very dynamic. There's not a quick, easy answer. But what you always got to do is you got to go back to the interpretation of the Second Amendment. Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that we see here is like when you actually look at the statistics when it comes to violent crimes in general. So a lot of we talked about this before too. It's kind of like with the whole debate on assault rifles, AR-17s.
Who said that? You got to put that up on here.
We're going to put that up
because somebody's called it an AR-17. Yeah.
Now today we don't have muskets anymore. I'm not sure Washington and Jefferson meant AR-17s or AK-47s.
And this goes back to it because a lot of people that are anti-gun, they want to call like guns that look scary have to be, they villainize them. So assault rifle, an AK-47,
But you know what's crazy? I think that's just preconditioning because I don't know if you're aware of this, but in World War II, the German army was trying to convince the rest of the world that this shotgun, the trench shotgun, shouldn't be allowed in theaters of war because it's so deadly and so devastating. You know, when you get shot by buckshot, I mean, these were, I forgot how many were loaded in there. Let's say there's 9 in one shell. That double-aught buck is the size of a 9mm. So with squeeze of one trigger, you're getting hit by 9mm bullets essentially. Well, so I mean, now in modern age, you bring in social media and false news and all this other stuff.
Fake news.
They're showing the gun, but I'm sure they could have chose any rifle. But for some reason, the AR, because I think of the capacity of the magazines there, or clips, as people mistakenly call them.
And not just that, though, the miscategorization of guns. And I've seen it all the time. You look at news, and there'll be either a congressman or somebody who's just wants higher gun restriction or gun bans, and they'll hold up these guns, and they'll just give these false characteristics and attributes to these guns, which are not true. And I've seen it done all the times, and we're going to resource all of those in upcoming videos. I want to specifically talk about those things.
Yes.
And I think right now the main topic is will less guns equal less gun violence. But in all reality, you see the opposite in the statistics that we presented. And that's that one statistics. And when you really stop and think about it, rifles and shotguns only account to 4%. 2% for rifles and the category difference between a shotgun and a rifle. Okay, there is a difference between the two. But between them both, they're each at 2%.
But then the rifle's the most dangerous.
Those things. So actually, handguns account for 48%, okay, which is higher. But a handgun doesn't look that scary. Why? Because it's what police officers carry. It's what most security detail carry. So
plus, they're more concealable. So,
but that's the point. That's why it's 48% compared to,
and they're cheaper to buy compared to an AR style rifle.
No, exactly.
What's going to cost you? It could go anywhere from $1,300 and up.
Okay.
Where a pistol you can buy one for $150. And which one do you think the criminal's going to buy?
No, exactly.
The cheaper one.
Well, not just that, or what's easier to steal, what's easier to conceal.
Yeah,
and secondly, on this topic too, 80% of the gun-related crime are drug-related.
Right.
And then countless other ones, how many of them are gang-related. So you kind of see what kind of segment of our culture is actually participating in these types of things, and it's all the illegal activity part. None of it has to do with legal gun ownership, because the statistics says a rise in legal gun ownership actually correlated with the decrease
in gun
crimes and violence and all those types of things.